Today on this channel, we talk about change makers, and being a change maker is in part choosing to speak up and stand up and to act for good in the world. And it's going to go against the grain a lot of the time, even if it's our internal resistance and beliefs and that sort of thing, or if it's societal beliefs. And people who are change makers, just for a point of reference, would be people like Mahatma Gandhi, Anne Frank, Martin Luther King, Greta Thunberg, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, it's much easier for me to say, and J.K. Rowling, the first billionaire author, mother of three, and most significant donor of her personal wealth to charity. And I'm so pleased to ask you about the book that you have just written. This is so huge. And I just heard about it recently that this, I believe, has been 20 years in the making. And is this the same book that I heard about all those years ago that you wanted to write?
Almost certainly. Yes. I can't remember specifically, but it's been the only book I've ever wanted to write. And it's something that I've been talking about. It would have been more than 20 years that I've been talking about writing this, and I've come at it tentatively a few times and from a few different directions. But that effort has always petered out. It's been replaced by some sort of life circumstance or some sort of form of procrastination. So it's really only now, 20, 25, maybe more years after starting to talk about it, that I actually got it done. And yeah, it's quite phenomenal. It's like I think you can liken it to the process of giving birth to something. It's a bit of a wrestle. It's a bit of a struggle. It's a bit painful. Doesn't go the way you plan for it to go. You don't end up with the book that you dreamed of writing, but you have this amazing thing. And then, yeah, what do you do with it? How do you release it into the world? But it's been an amazing process, a very long one, but a very, very gratifying one. I was a little bit pissed because that was the story I wanted to tell, but
Yeah.
you kind of have to give that up. There's a weird kind of grief in that too, and then tell the story as it is that, he was just someone who came after all of those things. But that doesn't really make his efforts any less remarkable.
That's amazing. Gosh, it sounds like it's going to be an amazing story for others to read, even if it ends up being family only. And so, what did you discover about yourself while you were going through the process of writing?
Oh, good question. I think it was one of the many iterations where I've had to show myself that I can do something hard. So having spent more than 20 years procrastinating, and I would have continued to procrastinate about it had it not been that, my dad was inconveniently turning 80 and I needed a gift to give him, that I could push myself to do something that was proving hard. I was afraid of writing it. I was afraid of writing something bad. I was afraid of writing something that wouldn't get published or wouldn't get read. And I was afraid that I would be shown to be a fraud because basically all I was doing was plagiarizing. I was really just taking other people's work and had to show up to all of those things and then kind of get on with it despite that. I really, really, really wanted to write the book. And I decided in the end, I could give myself an out, as it were, by giving myself permission to write a bad book. If I forgave myself for not writing something good the first time, it would get a lot easier. I was also afraid that it wouldn't get published. And so I got around that by saying, well, I will just self-publish it and I will literally just print enough copies for the people in my family who want to read it. And I will call it a first draft. And that way I'm off the hook. It's just my first attempt. I'm going to get all the facts down on paper. I'm going to kind of come at this and see some of what I'm capable of. And then I will, take a breath, circle back at some point in future and have a second go and maybe do it better. Or, maybe it'll be worse. But I found that all of those things just helped me get on with it. And so ultimately I learned about the fact that I could get it done and that I could do something imperfectly and that nobody died, that the world would continue, even though the book was possibly a piece. I mean, at least it's out there and it's done. And yeah, now it can move on to become something new.
Oh, I absolutely love that, the naming of all the fears, as you just
Mm.
did. And I think for anybody, I was going to say any author, but that's not true. It's anybody producing anything, these fears that, I'm not going to get it right and it won't be good enough. And we generally, like if we buy a book, it's in a bookstore and we'll buy something that's recommended. So it's probably a bestseller. And we're that benchmark is so
Mm.
unrealistic. It's
Mm.
like being a marathon runner on day one. It's just not a thing. And, it's so true how these fears can teach us things and if we will step into them. And do you have any thoughts on that about how you'd arrived at being able to step into those fears?
Yeah, I'm sure I have lots. I just have a hard time putting words around them. But I
Mm.
think it's very interesting what you just said back there was that, nobody arrives at, thinks that they can run a marathon on day one. And I guess I kind of hadn't made that connection until you just said it, but it's very, very true. And I think that ultimately, one of the things I've learned, funnily enough, both through writing and through my running, which is something else I do a lot of, is that success is actually a terrible teacher. Um, success doesn't teach you anything. Success just says that you did everything fine and there's nothing else to do. Whereas the process of failing or doing badly is actually, if you can get past the embarrassment of it, is actually a masterful teacher. It's like, how else could I approach it? What else could I have done? What other resources were at my disposal? And what is the other thing that I really want to say that I'm not getting at? And so ultimately, I've started to embrace the process of failing a little bit more than I used to. And that's been a slow process of learning and it's ongoing. But I think both the writing and the running have been a means to me learning all of that.
This is brilliant. Growth mindset, absolutely. And that thing of Carol Dweck writes so amazingly on the topic of growth mindset, but without it, we can't start anything ever. And that thing that you said about success not really teaching, it's not a great teacher, and failure is where we learn, is something that we aren't taught at school. From a young age. We're
Mm.
indoctrinated to win. And
Mm-hmm.
that's all, that they're the only ones that get on the podium.
Yep.
Oh, I've heard in their book or their podcast saying every night their father used to say, "What did you fail at today?" It's so great, a
Wow.
question. So to stretch themselves, basically, because
Yeah.
you're going to fail. I think that is just such an, I wish I'd said that to my kids, but anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but it,
I love everything about how stepping into fear and being prepared to fail, like just letting go of what failure means as a person. You're showing us how powerful and what you can achieve with that. It's such a big thing how when we do these hard things, we learn so much about ourselves. And as you said, nobody died in the process. It wasn't as
yeah.
bad
Yeah.
to do it. And you've got this, you brought it down to earth out of your mind, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.